Hello and welcome to the Nothing But Static YouTube channel. It's time for one of those list things I keep hearing so much about. Lists are still a thing, right? This particular list I want to talk about animated comedy because over the last several years there's been a bit of a resurgence in them. I've noticed that recently we're finally starting to see some animated comedies that are actually taking advantage of the medium and the ability to not just, a sitcom can follow a family in a house, an animated comedy can do a heck of a lot more, even on a low budget. So I don't know why they weren't taking more risks before, but recently the standard has improved so much that out of nowhere I have this massive list of shows now that are animated that I absolutely love, and they're basically appointment viewing. So with that in mind, I thought it might be fun to count down the 6 best animated shows on television right now. Or at least in my opinion. You may disagree, I might have missed something, or you might just have a different taste to me. If you have different tastes to me, great, tell me, let me know down in the comments. Do that angry typey thing that you guys love to do on the YouTubes. But yeah, so enjoy the list. Number 6. Bob's Burgers. With that said, tragically, the first show on this list could arguably be described as a Simpsons Guy clone based on the premise. It follows a hapless father and burger bar owner Bob and his family's misadventures. The family are just dysfunctional enough to generate interesting stories without falling too hard into the zany area similar shows have ultimately fallen victim of. So while it does have a premise that can be compared to other animated family comedies, don't be fooled, this is no uninspired copycat. It's managed to find a strong and unique voice entirely in spite of those surface similarities. It tends to be a lot more down to earth than its contemporaries too, sometimes feeling more like a live action sitcom than an animated show. Plus, this show has some of the funniest writing and one of the best voice casts on TV, making Bob's Burgers well worth your time. Number 5. South Park. Some of you may think of this as cheating because South Park has been on the air for 19 years and arguably shouldn't count as a show that's recently made it onto my much-watched list. But after several years of not regularly watching the show, it seems South Park has genuinely found a second wind, and in the last couple of seasons I've fallen in love with the quiet little mountain town and its inhabitants all over again. It's actually remarkable that a show this old is still managing to feel this fresh, but thanks to the stellar writing and insane production schedule, each episode is produced in just 6 days, allowing them to parody stories still making headlines, the show has never felt more relevant. So if, like me, you let South Park get away from you over the years, you need to fall back down that rabbit hole. It's never been better. Number 4. Adventure Time. This is the only show on this list that is actually intended for children, but that should not put anyone off from giving Adventure Time a chance. And I do mean give it a chance, like a season or two's worth, because at first glance, I honestly felt it was simply too surreal for my tastes. The world is imaginative and absolutely bursting with charm, but the logic of the world simply didn't seem consistent, and I found this irritating and actually gave up. But it turns out this is entirely intentional, and the true genius of the show actually lies in its ability to slowly make the viewer understand aspects of the world over time through small amounts of information. The show actually taught me to just relax and have fun and trust that the creators wouldn't leave all the stuff hanging, and now I'm utterly hooked. I won't describe its plot here as I feel discovering this show is half the fun, but Adventure Time is funny, confident, and most importantly, it actually tells stories through its visuals, which are as brilliant, innovative, and crazy as the stories themselves. All in all, Adventure Time is one of the most charming kids shows on TV, and despite being a kids show, it never once talks down to its audience and is never anything less than hilarious. Number 3. BoJack Horseman. One of the biggest surprises of last year for me was BoJack Horseman. It was a Netflix original that completely flew under my radar while it was being made, but filled my Twitter feed with buzz and praise once it launched. So I checked it out, and I'm extremely glad I did. The show is about BoJack Horseman, a former sitcom star desperately clinging to a fading career while spiraling into a pit of self-loathing. Also, he's a horse. BoJack is as funny and irreverent as any of the shows on this list. With a superb cast, imaginative art design, and smart writing, it gleefully draws you into its bright yet cynical world with worrying ease. Its narrative plays out in a serialized fashion, developing over multiple episodes to a satisfying climax, something that actually sets it apart from other shows in the genre, which usually lean towards the more story-of-the-week approach. But even with all that said, where the show truly excels is in its character work. For an animated show, it's insane how fleshed out these characters are. Some dramas would honestly do well to take note. They manage to feel genuinely nuanced while being strong sources of comedy in themselves. And the cherry on top is that the show has no problem going to dark and more thoughtful places in the midst of all the inherent silliness, making for an incredible and unique viewing experience you won't soon forget. Number 2. Archer. Archer isn't just one of the best animated comedies on TV, but one of the best comedies on TV full stop. For a start, it's more original than most, opting to focus on the world of espionage rather than the more stereotypical family model. But on top of that, the show has not been content to stay even in that world. Without spoiling anything, it's drifted into all sorts of other scenarios over its 6 seasons. From a writing standpoint, this show is an absolute work of genius, casually building complex yet subtle long-term story arcs that pay off in unexpected ways. Combine this with some of the most intelligent jokes and dialogue on TV, some of the most innovative characters and scenarios, an absolutely stellar voice cast, and some surprisingly epic action sequences, and you have Archer. And while its more recent seasons have not been as strong as the earlier ones, it's still vastly superior to most shows on TV. It cannot and should not be ignored. Number 1. Rick and Morty. This list is actually a video adaptation of an article I wrote in March 2014, when Rick and Morty was just 7 episodes into its 11-episode first series. Rick and Morty placed 4th at the time, and when I think about that, it's kind of amazing that it made it onto such a list, only having broadcast half a season. But my love for the show has grown astronomically since that time. Not only did the remaining episodes prove to be even stronger than those that preceded them, the show somehow found a way to burrow its way into my very soul, and has since become an obsession. For those unfamiliar, Rick and Morty is a show from the minds of Community creator Dan Harmon and voice acting genius Justin Roiland. It follows the rather disturbing relationship between a drunk mad scientist and his teenage assistant, who also happens to be his grandson. First and foremost, the writing is amongst the smartest of any show of its kind. It manages to seamlessly weave insane high-concept science fiction stories with the domestic and family lives of its characters in very satisfying ways, creating a show that can be as funny or dramatic as it wants to be at any given time. Secondly, it's outright the funniest show on this list. It's that simple. I laugh the hardest and the most frequently while watching Rick and Morty, and despite having rewatched the first season in its entirety 4 times now, I haven't yet stopped laughing. In fact, they only seem to get funnier on each viewing. Combine that with the incredible voice work, the naturalistic dialogue, the complex science fiction concepts, the attention to detail, the fantastic visuals, and the sheer innovation at work in each episode, and you have a show that has really proven to be something truly special. I'm not simply recommending people watch this show, I'm outright demanding it. Well, thank you very much for watching the list. That's everything for that. But of course, if you'd like to see more content like this, you're always welcome to subscribe, and then you can be notified when we make more stuff like this. Your other option, of course, if that's too at a later date, Dan, no, I want more content now. Brilliant. We have all sorts of stuff that already exists. You just click on the channel link below. We have more lists, a couple at least so far. We have a weekly vlog series from the co-host of the podcast, Chris, called Once Upon a Week, where he takes apart episodes of Once Upon a Time. We made a 6-part sort of scripted web series called Writing Space last year that we're very, very proud of. There's something called the TV Rundown, which is like a weekly comedy news thing wrapping up television news. We've got loads of stuff. So yeah, go have a look at the channel and see what else you can find. So assuming I didn't completely balls the video up, we will hopefully see you again in the future for more of our content. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching.